We're live. Hey, everyone. Dr. Kennard here with, we got another person here. Here we go. We got the 420 Atheist with sporting the same or very similar mustache with John Hudson. Dr. Tom Foolery, library volunteer. And, of course, Rage, the Raging Atheist. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, what's up?
Wonderful. That's a natural progression from an enthusiast to volunteering.
Yes. Yes.
Started a new career path. That's all.
Yep.
You can't
be an actual librarian next.
So how weekend?
I had a weekend that didn't suck. I'll say that. Right. So that's positive.
That's always good.
Yeah. I did the outdoor brunch thing. I explored my inner white person and did the outdoor brunch thing on Sunday.
Yeah. I went and did the same thing, except it was meat based.
Oh, I saw it. I saw your face. You had a plate of meat, basically.
It was. There was $130 for the meat alone.
Wow.
Oh, wow. God. How many people was that for, John?
4.
I was waiting for you to say 1.
Nick's
big. You.
Nick's a big boy, and I mean he can shovel it down. But God, I worry about his heart.
Yeah.
Somebody's gonna have PETA showing up at their door.
You're on one. That's good.
Yesterday, my outdoor event was at my cousin's husband's memorial service.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah, we had the memorial, and that was a outdoor gathering in Aunt's backyard to remember him.
How was the service? Was it a secular service?
It wasn't a service at all. It was just a gathering to remember him. No connotation. I guess technically my uncle prayed before we ate, but that's something that people just do.
Right. Out of habit.
I passed a kidney stone. My weekend sucked.
Every time there's I don't know what it is. It's like a coin toss. Talking to Ray. So tell me about, whether or not we hear something new, something that I could be anxious about my own health.
Yeah, I haven't been online in like 3 days. It's been horrible. It started like my back went out. I thought my back went out, so I went to the ER. They treated me for my back going out. 2 days later, I found out it was a kidney stone. So it's been a bad week and a half. But
ouch.
Feeling better. I'm doing good. It's gonna be a better week.
Wow, dude. I had no idea that a kidney stone could manifest as pain that's like throwing out your back.
Yeah. When I actually went to see my real doctor, it was the first thing she asked. When I went to the ER, they thought I had a heart attack, but I'm like, no, I have back pain, and it's, I have chest pain as well, but it's because of my back pain, and they treated me for back pain. But yeah, the first question she asked is, well, because it was like right under my right shoulder blade, and clear indicator right there.
Generally, Andy, kidney pain does manifest in your back.
Yeah,
it's your lower back.
It could have also been a gallbladder as well.
And it can actually just it starts off just feeling like maybe you've pulled a muscle in your lower back.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
I'll have to remember that, because when I was a kid, I had during my growth spurt, I had scoliosis, and I had to do some physical therapy. And because of my my minor disability with not having a lot of muscle tone, it created my muscles seized up. So I'll have to remember that I can't just think that the new presenting system manifestation of symptoms is caused by the same thing that I had years ago. So I'm going to put that in the long-term anxiety cabinet here in my brain.
Strangest thing that ever happened to me, and I think I told this story, so I'll tell the brief version. But I presented to the ER I had to get my partner to drive me because by the time I got there, I could not breathe. I was turning blue. I felt like my lungs were collapsing, and they raced me in for an emergency lung X-ray. And the guy that checks the X-ray comes out and says, "You need to fart." That somehow gas. I don't know how it gets in your shoulder, like up high. It was like in my lung, up here, but it was gas. Apparently, my stomach was so distended, it was pressing on my lungs. So that's why it was painful to breathe.
And to Simply Secular Dave, I am kind of disparaging ER doctors a little bit, but they are real doctors, I guess. But by real doctor, I just simply mean my family doctor that I go to knows my history.
I just bust out anytime somebody says fart.
He probably didn't put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think I said hello to you, sir, when you popped in. I hope you're doing well this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
What's up, buddy?
All right, so real quick, I do have something serious I want to talk to you about, Andy. It shouldn't take too long, but and anybody else can pipe in as well. I am familiar with the Temple of Satan. I have watched Hail Satan. I'm considering on covering an interview by Penny Lane, the person that made the movie.
Penny Lane.
Just kind of, I'm considering it because I want to show the opposite side, and I have, I've had a couple of conversations with some what I would consider Temple of Satan Satanists, but right now I'm writing a script based on the other side of Satanism, which would be that really dark Christian version of Satan that people worship and do really horrible things to. And in my opinion, it's I think as a result of the satanic panic back in the 80s, early 90s, you had two kind of reactions. You had one reaction that kind of wised up to it, and then another reaction where you had these disenfranchised children of very fundamental people that kind of latched onto this version of Satan and really kind of grasped it in this rebellion against the fundamentalism that surrounded them. I was kind of encircled by this, and I found this story about this guy named Pazuzu Algarat.
Pazuzu, you gotta love a guy named Pazuzu.
Yeah. So anybody not familiar? I did a video recently, kind of outlining the history of Pazuzu. So Pazuzu was the demon that was in the exorcism, and was the demon that possessed the little girl in that movie. So this guy lived in the town over from where I grew up in. He was selling drugs at a time period where I was selling drugs. We ran with a lot of the same circles. It's basically almost an impossibility that I did not run into this guy, but I never met him. And I'm trying to find people that I grew up with that did. And he ends up killing a couple people, and he does satanic worship to Pazuzu, but as well as Lucifer. And my interest, because I know a lot of Temple of Satanists, and I know a couple. Do you know what their reaction to a Satanist like that is? Because I'm going to go hardcore at this dude, but it's going to be a fine balance to where I want to recognize that not all Satanists are like this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are theistic Satanists, right? So there are people who believe in that there is an actual, God, so to speak, small g God named Satan, and whether or not they believe that he's a good or a bad deity. I would say that off the top of my head, and one before starting off, I want to do with a caveat that the satanic panic is still alive and well, in form of QAnon, right? Because a lot of these QAnon conspiracies are just echoes of the satanic panic.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, but mentally ill people cling on to different. I just Googled him, dude, and he is nuts.
Yeah.
I would like to say the
crazy guy.
Satanic Temple also on Tuesday nights they have they're on the website. You can go and get a free ticket. You just get a free online little password key, and through the Satanic Estates website, and on Tuesday nights, you can go and hang out with them, and it's just like kind of like YouTube. Their website, you can go to different rooms, and some of the rooms, you're in a group like we are right now, and then some of the rooms are where they're having like their sermon, or however they put it. It's just like you can see the one person who's giving the talk, and then everybody's in the side chat. It's pretty cool. I've gotten to check it out once, but I think some of the things that you're asking about, Rage, like that would be a great resource to like kind of dive into that.
I agree with you, Tobin, because they do Temple Tuesdays, and that's what they call it, Temple Tuesdays at the estate. And what if you don't know about what the estate is? It's a virtual building with different rooms in which you can go to different rooms where they have different activities being done. It's actually good for online conferences because you can have several activities going on at the same time, and people can kind of like journey through the estate and engage in whatever activity they want to, listen to a talk or listen to a show. It's a valuable resource.
Well, yeah, I'll check that out for sure. Because I'm really turning my eye to that. And I was watching this interview with Penny Lane, and there was one of the leaders from the local sect that she was doing this Q&A at, and he did talk about how most of the religious aspects are non-theistic, and that's really to where they still have like ceremony. It's more metaphor. It's not theistic in nature. It's just ceremony. It's just how they kind of go through the religious aspects of it, to where that other darker side of Satanism, the side that we get accused of being on by other Christians, they really believe this stuff. Like this guy really believes this stuff, and I can see like if once you really get into this guy's story, it could appear almost like Pazuzu was protecting him for a period of time. So like it's really freaky, it's really crazy, and I'm really interested. I'm going to try to reach out to a couple of the Satanists that I do know, and because I'm really interested in how they respond to a Satanist like that.
What's fascinating is that you have someone who, Pazuzu, for those of you who don't know, Pazuzu, what I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, Chad or whoever, Pazuzu was a Sumerian demon, or Sumerian. So you can see how this kind of Satanism, which is a reflection of Christianity, right? This kind of crazy, saying that the the Satan version of evangelical Christianity or Christianity is the right way to go. And then they take on like a foreign deity as a demon. That just shows you the kind of crazy, wet squirrel kind of brain someone like Mr. Pazuzu has or had.
It's the same religious fervor as you get on the other side, though. There's extremists, and from what I understand about the Satanic Temple, is their Satan is just more of a metaphor in order for them to get the same treatments and stuff that other churches get.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Some do believe in the deity form of Satan in the Bible, but even most of those Temple of Satanists that believe in the deity form from the Bible, they think that the Bible represents a free thinker that stood in rebellion of the original tyrant. Not the Satan of Christianity, because the Satan of Christianity is really different than the Satan in the Bible.
Well, it's the Satanic Temple. From what I understand, and just going by the tenets, they're a non-theistic.
That's what they go by. Yeah,
right. So you have the Church of Satan too. They are also non-theistic.
Yeah, and that's the one that Anton LaVey created.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I've been meaning to look more into him. Yeah, it fascinates me. And you know, as much as I've been called a Satan worshiper, I think it's far past time I actually started looking at the nuances of that. You know, but yeah, I know you know a lot of the Satanists. You work with a lot of Satanists, so I figured you'd be a good starting point.
Yeah, you know, once again, you know, Lucian's been on the show on the channel a couple of times. Stu Dahan, who was the head lawyer.
Yeah, I saw that one. I saw that one.
He was, and what was interesting, and this is what helped me understand the culture of Satanism, of the Satanic Temple, is that I asked him, "Gosh, dude, you know, do you have to be an activist to be a member of the temple?" And he said, "No, people come for Satan, and then they stay for the activism, so to speak." So what's interesting sociologically about the Satanic Temple is that there was already a societal group, right? That was there. They just didn't have a name. They just didn't have any kind of organization. And the Satanic Temple seemed to tap into that pre-existing group. And that's why it's relatively popular and organized, as comparison to a lot of other humanist groups or a lot of atheist groups that don't really have that kind of community, grassroots kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that especially the Temple of Satan is doing some great work politically. But this was a side of it, you know, and I'm trying to take this different approach with this because I definitely don't want to add on to the satanic panic or give justification to Christian narratives about what Satanism is. But it is a fascinating story that I wanted to cover, basically because. Like I said, I by all accounts should have ran into this guy, and like ever since I heard about this guy a couple weeks ago, my mind has just went there. Like, what would have happened had I met this? Would I have been one of those misfits that he seemed to kind of draw in? And it's crazy that this was happening even when I lived there and I moved out of the state in my early 20s. But I never heard about it, even though we were running with the same circle. So even my own friends that knew about this guy, it was so secret that I never even heard about it. It's just fascinating to me. Culture, society, rebellion against fundamentalism, all of it's in this story. I'm pretty excited about it, but Satanism has really started to pique my interest, not in like, oh, I'm going to go become a Satanist, but I want to know what Christians are calling me.
You're Christian. You're Satan curious. That's what you are.
Yeah, I'm Satan curious.
Wonder, like the question I keep on going over in my head is, well, if you know people are out there calling themselves Satanists, and they're aren't they feeding that whole narrative that there's a satanic panic? And then I'm like, wait a minute, no, Tobin, they're using the Satan as a way to make it to where they can fight back on theocracy whenever it's happening in our government, like the 10 Commandments. They wanted to put up a Baphomet. It's supposed to be fighting against it. And I'm like, but then I'm like, well, doesn't that like help the Christians with their narrative and like enforcing their belief that there is a Satan thing? I struggle with this. I fight with it in my mind. I'm like, is it a good thing or a bad thing to really be going at it like that?
For me, at least, the way that I wrap my mind around it, and you can see this in the names in terms of the guests that come on the show, is that I'm always looking to push the Overton window, to push the conversation more to the left and more anti-fascist, more anti-evangelical. And at least I feel that the Satanic Temple is doing all of those things.
Yeah, and my take, Tobin, is as far as the Christians go, it doesn't help because it does further their narrative from their point of view. But I think socially, it's helping to push us in the left direction, which is, I think, Andy's point. And as long as that's happening, if the Christians get left behind, well,
yeah, you know,
I think they're doing great work in exposing what freedom of religion really looks like. And I think the sooner that people realize what freedom of religion really looks like, the sooner we can get rid of the bullshit.
Yeah, I hate it when everybody gets lumped in together, though. You know, when we say Satanists or Christians or there's human people on both sides, and there's fucking crazies on both sides.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Just like some of the Christians I met, my grandmother was shit. I could be drunk off my ass at 3 a.m. and stroll into her house, and she'd make me a cheeseburger, even though she was a good Mormon. There was that unconditional love of us kids and humans in general. It's hard for me to group it all together.
Dr. Tom Brewery, were you going to say something?
Yeah, for encouraging a group's narrative, it's like any group that is going to be pushing that narrative anyway, they're going to be pushing the narrative regardless of what other groups have to. If they don't have the Temple of Satan or Satanic Temple, they will still push the narrative anyway with whatever else they have.
Yeah,
it's not like their existence helps. It's just that's what they choose to use because it's there.
So one of my favorite stories about General Grant in the U.S. Civil War is that when he went over to take command of the armies of the Potomac, which is the big theater of war here, he was going up against General Lee, and his lower generals, his staff, were talking about what General Lee is going to do to us and what General Lee is doing and what's he going to do next. And Grant's like, you gotta change your mind around. You have to stop worrying about what he's going to do to us, and you got to get into the mindset of what we are going to do to him. And you got to get off defensive, and you got to think about offense. And I think about the Satanic Temple, that's what they're doing. They're on offense.
Right.
Yeah. I think they're often doing the work that I scream for the Democratic Party to be doing. To be loud, to be vocal, to be right there in their faces as they're making these protests. I was watching this really fascinating thing on. It was like Vice, and it was like this abortion rally that Christians were putting on at some abortion clinic, and the Temple of Satan shows up dressed as grown-ass babies in diapers with these masks on. I mean, it was beautiful, and it was hardcore in your face. The Christians there were made very, very uncomfortable, just like they were making those the people that worked in that building very, very uncomfortable. I thought it was brilliant and beautiful, and I wish people were more politically active like that.
Yeah, that was awesome. The one time I did get to go visit the temple, they were talking about how you need to know the things that were done in the name of Satan, because you're going to get those kind of questions and stuff like that. I think that kind of goes along with what you're saying, Knock, is like knowing the history of what has been done in the name of Satan, so you can have better nuanced conversations about Pazuzu, or how I forgot how you say his name.
Pazuzu. The interesting thing about Pazuzu is that early Christians, one of the earliest Christians there were, saw all of these other God practices being worshipped, and they incorporated it into the myth that they were creating. So Pazuzu has been incorporated into Christian mythology from the very beginning. He was the ruler of the first level of the abyss in Sumerian lore. People considered him to be this really wicked person. Like he controlled, I believe it was the east winds, which brought pestilence and famine, and he could wipe out villages. And so Christians appropriated him and made him basically the left-hand lieutenant of Satan, the prince of all demons, and that's where the lore comes. It's mainly Catholic demonology, but modern Christians try to run away from that. Oh, those are Catholics, they're not Christians. But I'm sorry, but Catholicism was Christianity for the first 1,000 years. You don't get to run away from that.
Sammy, were you going to say something, brother?
Yeah, I just think that's a really interesting point, and not one that I can say I've ever seen anyone do a comparison of, through history, what has been done in the name of God and what has been done in the name of Satan.
That would be interesting.
So if it's Sumerian demon, correct? Okay.
Yeah, a Sumerian demon lord, I guess.
Is this taken out of the Bible, or is this something that they found some Sumerian texts which they've read and translated back? Because I find that's why I find Dr. Josh so interesting, is because the cuneiform writing and such is something that I've actually tried to learn. It's very difficult, but his video yesterday taught me more than it has in the last 5 years of trying it.
And that's the very interesting thing, though. Like in the Bible, the only thing that's really named is Lucifer, and then there's fallen angels. So it leaves too much room for the imagination, right? Like
but it's the whole Bible.
So you can start appropriating all of these other older beings into it and call them fallen angels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really fascinating once you look into it. I've been hooked ever since I started, the Church of Satan, I knew about it before I started watching Andy's channel, but yeah, watching a couple of your interviews with your buddy really kind of made me start looking at it. And then I found this story, which it was like a documentary on Netflix. I found one night trying to go to bed, and it's really, I started looking at other Satanists that are on YouTube, and they'll show their ceremonies, and it's, I have a big issue with the ceremony itself, because like they'll be wishing or sending this demon to do harm, but then once you start listening to them for a bit, they don't really believe in any of it, right? Like they, it's just this non-theistic ceremony they perform that they don't really necessarily believe in. It's really complicated and fascinating.
Yep. And hopefully at some point there'll be some real sociological kind of research done on the Satanic Temple, because right now, Phil Zuckerman, Professor Zuckerman, he does. We've talked about Phil before, and Phil's been on this channel. He's done sociological research on atheists in general, and he just wrote a big piece for Salon that we covered a week or two ago about the morality of atheists versus the religious, and how we're so much better than evangelical Christians. I'll say that we're just better, morally speaking. But I would like to see something done, in terms of the Satanic Temple and these atheistic religious groups. I think it'd be fascinating.
Yeah, it does add a new.
Guys, got to get back to the kindergarten.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Have a good one.
Take care.
Yeah.
It is fascinating. I was watching this. I can't remember where I was watching. I'm sure it was like a Christian saying it, but it was said in a way that I can't quite dispute it, because we do have a rising nun population here in America, and what this person was putting out was that doesn't necessarily mean we have a larger percentage of people losing religion. We just have a larger percentage with more information available than ever before of people seeking the correct religion that's right for them. And
that's a nice fucking spin. That's what I hear. I hear something spinning around there.
So like that kind of fascinates. It does kind of fascinate me, because I have observed, some people, some former atheists become pagans, we've recently all observed Khalil Allah become Islamic, and so it is like this thing that it got in my head, and I'm like, let's see where this leads, what rabbit hole I'm slipping down into now.
I was gonna say that before, actually, Rage. One of the first Satanists I came across on YouTube, he's definitely a believer, and he was giving a lecture. I imagine it was just like a college or a technical college or something. I don't think it was a university, but by any means. But it was about, long story short, cursing and hexing and spells and things. And he had all these different skulls, human skulls, and was going through all the different symbols and went through all the demons, from Satan down through the watchers, and was describing what demons you should appeal to for what magic. And that was my sort of first introduction into it. And so whenever I'd hear about the Satanic Temple and stuff, I just sort of ignored it and thought, just the opposite of Christian. But it's only very recently I've sort of realized there's this whole massive other side of it, which I fully appreciate, but I'm sort of with Tobin. I wonder if it's more damaging than good.
Trust me, they get that question at every Q&A that they do. Like the one that I was watching with Penny Lane, it's one of the first questions that they're asked is like, I see what you're doing. I agree with what you're doing, but don't you think it just adds to their narrative against you? And they say, hey, this is something we struggle with, but ultimately this is kind of where we fall on it. This is something that we find necessary to do.
I had Howie Hawkins on from the Green Party. He was running for president, and at no point did I ask him, hey, why are you running for president when you know you're not going to run for president? Because, because once again, going on offense, pressing the other side, making them fight on their heels, right? That's and I'm not saying that should be the whole movement. I'm not saying that should be the whole community. But oh my fictitious God, if they're the ones who are gonna do the shit work, who are gonna do, and that's what it is. It's hard work, right? It is hard work.
I just wonder if it would be more beneficial if they went under the label of atheism.
And I'll tell you why.
The lack of God, or not so much atheism, but
I think they see
the lack of God
worse.
More than.
I'll tell you why it doesn't work, and it has to do everything about. I've had these conversations with my girlfriend, who's much smarter than I am, who's more mathy person, right? And she goes and she looks at things logically, and that's why she doesn't understand people, right? To some extent, because it's like it shouldn't work like this. It shouldn't.
That's where I'm at.
It shouldn't work like this. But the thing is, you have to follow the data, and the data is the path, right? To look at it and say, and look at the data points and say, well, this trend's in a totally different direction, which I did not think about, right? Which goes against my preconceptions. But it seems as if you cannot organize a tight group of people without some kind of image, some kind of real resonating personality, without some kind of image. And maybe the Satanic Temple, and this is just my own personal hypothesis, all this is, it's the best case scenario where they say this thing doesn't exist. This is only a model, right?
It shows the ridiculousness of it, I think.
But it resonates with our stupid fucking monkey brains enough that it creates this kind of gravity, right? That people want to be involved in. And I agree with you. It should just be atheism, right? It should just be, people should just get jazzed up about atheism. And I was in that path too. I was on that way of thinking for a long time. But then I just started looking at it and I started reading and I said, well, it just seems like our stupid monkey brains need some kind of personal image to kind of glom onto to really create this kind of fervor. In a very positive way.
Is it a case? Sorry, Tabin, if you had something to say.
I do. I really want to make sure this gets added to this conversation because, like, invocations that happen inside of the government, they happen, and if you don't have a religious group that, if you just go into the government and be like, I want to give an invocation, but I don't have, I'm an atheistic, although FFRF fights this same thing too, with them being able to have a secular invocation. Yeah. Like, this is something that is said before the government starts doing stuff inside their courts. This is one way to battle it. If you have another religious group that you don't want inside of the government, like the Christians don't want the Satanists to be able to give invocations and things like that. So they will fight that. And that throws up that, look, you don't want religions a part of our government. We need to be more secular. That gives it gives that opposition to it.
And that's the hypocrisy of America. Is we like to walk around and we'll have these arguments about separation of church and state, but there has never been a separation of church and state. All of our politicians has always been theist. Right now we have maybe one active atheist in government on the federal level elected to office.
The Free Thought Caucus is
it's never been there's never been a separation. The God has always been there, and God we trust is on our money. We pledge allegiance. At least when I grew up, I don't know if they still do, and it was a very godlike imitation that you're brainwashed to as a child. this illusion that I think that the Satan of Temple is really making people uncomfortable with is because they're exposing that illusion that, hey, we have this separation of church and state when we've never had a separation of church and state. It's time we started having one.
Yeah.
So essentially, I'd answered my own question before when I said I need to look at it. It's a political thing.
Yeah.
It's not meant to work on the individual level. It's not gonna, my
ultimately
mum
it's a political
and
movement.
people like that won't look at, gently possibly satanic things. So anything with the name Satan in it, like, not even going to acknowledge its existence. So it's going to have no effect on her as a person.
I will say this, just to clarify, that if I'm going to put on my Lucian hat here, if Lucian was here, he would say that that people are into Satan because they're into Satan, and that there are political manifestations, right, of it. And it's difficult to imagine being a member of the Satanic Temple without having some kind of political, effect in the world. But he would say that it's Satan first. Everything else comes out of that.
Yeah, and our perceptions of Satan are changed. They were a direct result of the satanic panic in the 80s that we grew up in. America's perception of Satan has changed. Satan wasn't, when you think Satan and you think darkness and sacrifice and all of this shit, that those are connotations that first Christianity put there that was never there in Judaism, but also they're rather modern. They're very, very new. They weren't there for most of the existence of Christianity as well. So it's you had your elements in the Catholic Church, definitely, and your periods of time, definitely. But when you're talking about the early church, Satan wasn't viewed as this. That changed over a matter of time. Honestly, like I kind of pointed it out earlier in the conversation, from watching a lot of Satanists now on YouTube, they'll say that Satan is that free thinker. Satan was standing against the God tyrant,
Right.
and a lot of them see Satan in that light, not in the darker, more Christian light that because differentiating the two, like someone like Pazuzu Algarad, who kind of was sucked into that Christian propaganda in his Satan worship. These people are worshiping a completely different deity.
So I just want
not completely different, just different aesthetics and different attributes to it.
Right. So most modern day Satanists don't believe in Satan as a small g god or as something that's quote unquote real. But I think, Donna, what's an interesting question is that how can you believe, let's say that you do believe in real Satan, right? That you're a theistic Satan. People can believe all kinds of things. There's no internal regulation of what kind of, there's nothing here in the brain that says you can't believe in this crazy thing.
It's hard for us to imagine or get there because to us they're connected, right? Like we was raised with God, and the antithesis of that was Satan. Somebody that just coming into Satanism, finding looking at it from a pagan, a pantheon of gods type sort of thing, I could see that being a completely different thing.
Yeah. Some of the aspects of the more modern day Satanism reminds me of some aspects of Gnostic Christianity, where they had the evil creator god, the demiurge, and then there was this other god that was trying to combat that evil creator.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom, Dr. Tom Foolery, library volunteer. I wanted to make that point earlier too, but I got lost somewhere in my meat brain. That's a good point. Because for the Gnostics, they believed that the God of the Old Testament, the Creator God, was the evil God, and that there are actually two deities considered God. So the Jesus God was not really part of the Yahweh deity. Gnosticism is interesting.
Yeah, and there's many different types of Gnosticism that they're not just one thing.
Right.
And not all of them would probably have the exact demiurge kind of view of the creator god, but is Gnostic is really just a blanket term of these other kinds of Christianity that we don't really clearly know about. Just here are some aspects we know that they did. Because it's really hard to really know about some of those alternate Christianities when the Orthodox Christianity dominated and was like, you do not exist, you are heretics, we will destroy you.
This is my steamroller. This is the Christian steamroller, just steamrolling all those other Christianities. Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating topic, and I guess more because I thought I'd bring this up. We talk about it 10 minutes and move on, and to see the engagement here, just like to me, this is something like all right. I want to talk about this on my channel. Open it up and let's have a big, broad conversation on Satanism. I think it's fascinating.
You start talking about the Satanic Temple, then you start also opening up different kind of conversations, right? About the same stuff that we talked about. What's the appropriate tactic of how to deal with evangelical Christians? What are different ways of thinking about religion in general? Because before the Satanic Temple came out, there was, whenever we talked about atheistic religions, there'd be something like blah 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 Buddhism, blah blah blah. Maybe this form of Hinduism that died out because of the theists on the subcontinent, like maybe 1,000 years ago. But now this is like a real, like in your face kind of form of non-theistic religion.
Well, yeah, and I think because Temple of Satan has been doing it for a while, but I think really like if you go back in the day and look at Anton LaVey, if he wasn't out there being outspoken, pushing the envelope like he was. Yeah. Would we be as open a society on this issue as we are now? Andy, you're my age. Probably a few of you others are as well. I think Sammy might be, but he looks eternally young, just like Andy does. Like we grew up in an era where an open conversation about religion, at least in my experience, that just wasn't something that ever happened.
We did it around the Dungeons and Dragons table, my friend.
Yeah,
that's what we did. And you see a lot. You will notice a lot of people in the temple who are our age. They were Dungeons and Dragons players, and they're like, "Yeah, we know it's all bullshit."
Yeah. I think I'm the only person under 40 that really attends these open rooms with Andy.
Yeah, well, Tobin's definitely a youngin'.
Yeah, you're not 40, are you, Tobin?
Yeah.
You're eternally
I've
young
passed
too.
40.
No shit. So you're eternally young as well. God damn all of you.
Yeah,
I just stayed out of the fucking. For me, the joke I always would tell is the best sunblock is the library. That was me when I was a kid. Like, what are you doing on the sunny day, Andy? I don't know. I'm going to go down to the library and walk in the shady parts going to the library, like on the shady side of the street because my eyes can't handle it.
It burns so bad.
It burns. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, interesting conversation. I appreciate all of your input. I've been writing this script and it gets really crazy and this guy did have mental issues. And I do think that a lot of the people that grasp onto the darker aspects of this, I think most of them, one, grew up in very fundamental situations. And for two, they have some mental illnesses involved because, when you talk about satanic worship, how Christians see it, you're talking about animal sacrifice as well as human sacrifice. And this guy covered both, so.
There are some dudes out there who have taken that shit to the next level. There's a name that is escaping me right now, and I wish I could say it right
this
now.
This guy
and
legally changed his name. He legally changed his name to Pazuzu Alvarez, filed his teeth into sharp points. When he killed himself, I believe, it's been rumored, and it's hard, I'm not going to report it in my video, but the rumor is he ate through his arm to sever the artery. So yeah, I mean, this dude is when you talk about cray, this is and not to make light because he has severe mental illness, it's a serious issue.
Sam,
Pazuzu could be a really kick-ass, mean-ass demon, but I can't help but think Zazu whenever you say it, which is the bird from Lion King. that was voiced by Rowan Atkinson. It doesn't sort of instill, demonic, scary. It's kind of cute and quirky.
The best thing, John Cena, in some movie I've never seen, but I found it researching this shit. He does a movie where he's called Pazuzu. He's like a drug dealer. I'm not sure if it's based on this guy. They don't look anything like each other. But if you want to laugh, it's worth checking out John Cena Pazuzu. You'll get a laugh out of it.
Nice.
For a wrestler who I've never really been a big fan of his acting, the few comedy things that I've seen him do, like the Suicide Squad, brilliant. The few comedy things I've seen him do, he's been well coached because he pulls it off.
Yeah. Rage. I still feel bad about the first Suicide Squad movie, right? I still have the bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it was so bad.
But the second movie, you're saying it's definitely worth my time.
Oh yeah, so if you're gonna go for a plot, not much there. But if you want to see some badass, like people getting eaten by a shark. It's definitely. You never know who's gonna die. That's the great thing about the movie. To the very end, you just don't know if they're all gonna die. It's definitely. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fucking awesome. I thought it was great.
Well, D Parks, if I ever become that famous, I would definitely hire you all part of the crew. That's no doubt about that. But a lot of my money wouldn't be dedicated to Project Mayhem, which would go to funding pranks against the super religion, the fascists, basically, people dressing up as babies, stuff like that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Donna in this side chat. Like, mental illness is an issue I've covered extensively on my channel, and it is a matter of degrees. It runs rampant in our society, and I think, unfortunately, especially in the time period of this particular individual, can become stigmatizing. Yeah, definitely a serious issue.
What were you gonna say, Tobin?
Oh, you could count me in on something like that. I that is a question that I have started to ask myself. Like, like I enjoy hanging out with everybody and stuff like that. But I want to do something. I want to. I don't know how to. I don't know what it is I want to do, but I want to make some kind of like action.
Right.
To help push the change.
Yeah. There are a lot of, once again, good organizations out there that are active. The Temple is one of them. Extinction Rebellion is another one. I think they're still doing their 2-week protest in London right now. But those are two doer organizations that do stuff on the street level.
Right on.
Yeah. And you can always get involved politically on the local. I think oftentimes, and I'm not sure how it is everywhere, but I've been a part of a few local Democratic party groups, and they often get infiltrated by the corporate people that the Democrats send down. We need people involved in our local Democratic offices to offset that balance.
Yeah.
And people lose interest when it's not the federal cycle. So that's the main thing I would suggest.
It's funny you say about infiltrating, because I was literally going to make a joke just before you started speaking that we need people to infiltrate the Republican Party and slowly, if we can get numbers up, slowly start to change their thinking.
Well, there's supposed to be rules against that, but oftentimes I think both parties break. They break those rules.
Yeah. Rules are useless unless there's a way to enforce them.
Yeah.
But that whole idea in itself is ridiculous. What rules?
Yeah,
how are you bound?
I stopped doing it. I got sick of it.
To a party.
Yeah,
can't you change your mind about who you want to vote for? Like, how do you register a party? That makes no sense to me.
I was always a registered Democrat until I after the second go around with Bernie, that's when I stopped being an official Democrat. Now I'm an independent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a party official in the Minnesota DFL here, so I've infiltrated the party, as you could say.
That's awesome.
Well, if you worked your way up from the local level, you didn't. It's a lot of these times, like, you know, for instance, on the Republican side, Herschel Walker's being brought back to Georgia, and dude hasn't lived there in 20 years, right? Like, it's there's a lot of shady stuff going on politically on both sides of the aisle. I stopped being involved because I was the lone voice. You know, if I had more people there that was local and was, like, you know, active in the day-to-days instead of when election time rolled around, then these people wouldn't get away with most of what they get away with. But most of the time, people's eyes are turned, and it's really disgusting.
One of the ways that Extinction Rebellion and the Satanic Temple are similar in the fact that they both believe in creating independent structures, independent from the political system, right? So Extinction Rebellion believes in community organizing. You know, the Satanic Temple believes in political organizing, you know, on the local level. And that creates a structure. And I'm not going to use the word Soviet, but I'm going to use the word Soviet right now. Is that basically the way how the Christians were able to overwhelm the Roman state was by creating a state within a state. And one of the reasons why the federal governments put down the Black Panthers is because the Black Panthers were doing something similar to that. They were, you know, feeding their own people. They were giving everyday, you know, services to everyday people, and that is the path forward if you want to create kind of like this radical change.
My best experiences in the Democratic Party was when we rallied together for a cause. So for 10 years, we fought for legalization here in Michigan for weed. We got it in the form of medical weed at first, and we didn't stop fighting then. We kept fighting, and I think it was another 5 or 6 years, and eventually we got it. And that's what kept me active for so long. But you know, it's just you know, witnessing the corruption and what they did to Bernie. I had to make my political stance was I can no longer officially, you know, I'm going to vote with you, of course, but I can't be with you anymore.
So this might help me wrap my head around it. Can you, because in Australia, you just need to be on the electoral roll, so registered to vote. That's it. I think you can join parties, like become like a member, but sort of thing. But can you be registered, say, as a Democrat, but vote Republican?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can. Well, here's the thing. It gets
and all the rules vary state to state.
Yeah. See, it gets complicated. It gets complicated because there are 50
what
different.
A surprise, Andy! What a fucking surprise!
There are 50 different states, right? So 50 different rules. So there are, like, when you talk about the primaries, right, for the president, there is something called an open primary where a Republican can vote in a Democratic primary, and vice versa. There are closed primaries in which only Republicans vote for their primaries for president. And so that, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, that makes a little bit of sense.
Yeah, there are even semi-open and semi-closed primaries.
And just because, you know, you're registered, quote unquote, as a Republican or Democrat on, you know, when you go get your driver's license or whatever, that doesn't mean you actually pay dues to the party, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there is a difference than somebody involved in the party and somebody that's not. Somebody that's part of the party pays the dues, and
So-
you're part of the party.
to make it even more confusing is that, you know, so when Rage says that he's an independent voter, there's actually a third party called the Independent Party. So when Rage is, I mean, and this is just how people talk. So when people say that they're independent, more than likely they're saying they're unaffiliated. So in other words, that they're not affiliated with a political party, while there's like 0.001% of the population who actually belong to the Independent Party.
Yeah. I consider myself socialist now, and I don't think Democrats represent me or what I want politically. But I think that they're the closest thing, and I haven't voted Republican. And God, man, since I lived in North Carolina back when I was a racist, long
Howie
time
Hawkins,
ago.
though, really like sitting and listening to Howie Hawkins and Angela. They have really good ideas. I really do enjoy listening to their. It's like the first politician that I could really sit there and listen to and go, yeah, I totally get where y'all are coming from.
Howie Hawkins is just a guy with a job up until the time he retired. He was working at UPS. I think he was like working as UPS, doing his job, been an activist for 40 years, maybe longer. And he just says the basic truth about everyone should have heating and cooling. We got to create a real Green New Deal that actually structurally works because the problem with like the military industrial complex here in this country, and this is a feature of the system and not a glitch of the system, is that every single district in this country gets federal money for the military industrial complex. So that means every single district in this country has an incentive to vote for the military industrial complex. And what Hawkins was saying is that we got to do something similar with the green economy, is that we have to make every single district getting something from the federal government so that we can get a green economy going. And it's like, wow, that just made so much sense to me.
One of the big movements that I've been a part of to try and break the two-party deadlock system is ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
Because if you have just the normal, whoever has the most votes wins, it naturally just tends towards two parties. Because in my state of Minnesota, the reason we have the Democratic Farmer Labor Party is precisely because of that. Because the Democratic Party and the Farmer Labor Party kept on losing to Republican Party when the Republicans were getting 40% of the vote, and the Democratic Party and Farmer Labor Party were actually pretty close on all the issues and splitting 60% of the vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need a lot of parties. I would like to see 15, maybe 20. I'd be good with that. Like when I say I'm a socialist, I'm very socialist light. I don't even think Democratic Socialists of America represent my political values. At least not where they stand right now. I would like to have more of a choice on where to throw my vote. But in order for that to happen, both major political parties would have to splinter and fracture.
I will say this. I'll say this beef about the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, is that trying to get them on this fucking channel is like pulling fucking teeth. I swear to my fucking fictitious God, just like trying to get anyone to show up and just to talk about their fucking party. I cannot even. I'm gonna keep trying, everyone. I'm gonna keep trying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just talking to the girlfriend in the chat about, she said about having a card to vote or something. And I said, it seems like you'd almost think that they're trying to make it hard for people to vote, which is literally the opposite of here, for example, where it's mandatory to vote at all levels. Yet in your country, breathe, Sam.
Yeah, here in Texas, you have to check it off whenever you're getting your driver's license. Like you have to say, I want to be registered to vote, and that's how you get the whole package. It's been a while. It got messed up for me this last go around. I was trying to get it to where I could vote, but I had to be able to get my driver's license, and I couldn't get my driver's license because the COVID had shut down our DPS place.
Yeah.
Can you tell
I
me?
ended up.
Sorry, go on, Ted.
That was the end of my statements.
Can you tell me in 40 seconds or less, Andy, why you wouldn't want your population to vote?
Well,
unless it's just one party because they think that they're going to vote for the other party.
So this is my observation. This is just my own personal opinion. It's obviously why it's obvious why the Republicans don't want people to vote, right? Because the Republicans are the oligarchical party. They're the white party. They are looking at the future and know that they cannot win a general election. They know this. You just got to look at the last presidential elections, and they cannot win the popular vote. So they have to try to keep the general masses from voting while still keeping their base energized. And that's smart. That is a winning strategy for them. You just got to look at how they've done in presidential elections. The Democrats, it's an interesting question. I think that there are some, and Rage is going to agree with me on this probably, there are people within the Democratic Party that are afraid of their base. They are afraid of their base.
Yep.
Because they know if the base gets energized, here comes the fucking pitchforks and the torches.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think that's genuine, and I respect that. Yeah. Especially once you look at some of the firebrand activists. There's some crazy ideas out there that's going to challenge your way of looking at things. Definitely. What I despise is the fake ones, the corporate people that are put there by the corporations to have the corporate narrative. I think that you might as well call them Republicans. And I think that it's a lot more than the cinemas and mansions of the world. I think that they're infiltrating the party and that there is this civil war within the party nobody's talking about. It's this silent civil war going on. And eventually that structure is either going to break or we're going to have an oligarchy. We're going to have a true oligarchy.
Yeah. All right. Unfortunately, it's over an hour, and I have other things I need to do today. Like I have a job thing at 3 p.m. Someone's calling me up for a job interview, a phone interview at least. So, but that's at 3 p.m. That's just a little bit of note. What my mad scramble of trying to find work right now. But that's enough about me. Thanks everyone for showing up. Everyone in the chat panel, always fun. Shamala hamala.
Shamala
Shamala hamala.
Shamala hamala. All right. Take care, everyone.